I love that line from Kolento. If you just want to earn money, you will never be a professional gamer. He loves winning.
He's not far wrong. And I think, you know, what I take away from that, there was a line there that I just loved where Bunnyhoppor said, well, what motivates me? I want to win. Next question. Like, that's a dumb question. that was essentially like the attitude that came out of him. And I think I made the comparison earlier when we were writing the pre-show about one of the reasons this is our match of the day is that I feel like it's, you know, similar personality types from two different eras, right? Bunnyhoppor now and Kolento from a couple of years ago both had their periods at like the dominant technical level player in the game. And I think you can see there from their answers in those interviews as well that they are, you know, philosophically fairly similar on most things. The one marked difference was where Kolento gave like the standard pro player answer to what's your style? Are you aggressive? Do you like to take risks? He said there's no such thing as risks or aggressive or defensive. There's just the right play or the wrong play, where Bunnyhoppor did actually choose to engage with that question. I think that was the one time where they really diverted apart.
There are play styles. People play certain.
I agree, there are play. So my philosophy on that is there are play styles because human beings fail to play Hearthstone perfectly. I think the goal is to play Hearthstone like a robot, and then there would not be a play style. But no human being can achieve that. So there are still instinct plays, feel plays, gut plays, and that's where a style comes in.
God, you're so much better at saying it than I am. This is why I'm a stupid host. I'm just an idiot. Let's take a look at Bunnyhoppor's deck. It's not very stupid at all.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. By the way, look at how stupid I am. I named this H1O Rogue.
Yeah.
But this is a clever name. There's 2 sharks, there's 2 sea giants. Those are oceanic-themed things. You take away one of those particles, what are you left with? H1O. I'm certain Bunnyhoppor could back me up on this as being a chemist of some sort, a PhD, or it's some sort of chemistry thing. I forgot exactly what the term was. It's very long-winded.
Such a wordsmith, Admirable. It's phenomenal.
Look, he got a PhD while he was having like the year of all time with Hearthstone. The guy is so smart and so dedicated to being the best at what he does. It's not really a surprise to see that who I would consider some of the strongest players all brought this deck.
But what I do consider a surprise is Bunnyhoppor bringing Rogue, because I've been watching Bunnyhoppor stream quite a lot just before I flew out here, and he was reviewing his mid-range hunter gameplay on stream. And his chat asked him, hey, you open to reviewing other games? And he said, if anyone else played mid-range hunter, yeah, I'll review their games. But I don't want to review any other decks because mid-range hunter is the only deck I know how to play right now. Direct quote. Now, I want to clarify that Bunnyhoppor's idea of not being able to play a deck is still better than 99.999% of the Hearthstone population. But seeing him on Rogue is a bit of a surprise to me. It might just be an issue with not wanting to be too predictable. But moving on, Kolento, very similar. Single copy of Eviscerate in his deck, 0 copies of Sea Giant, 2 copies of Spirit of the Shark. I think those are the big focal points right now as in terms of how many of each do you play in your deck. Secondary and tertiary decks unlikely to come into play, I should say, for either player. Pretty dedicated anti-mage and anti-warrior tech on both sides.
Yeah. You know, I really like the one Eviscerate choice from Kolento. This is a card I've actually kind of struggled with when I'm playing Rogue, is how many Eviscerates do I want? And the answer is usually some. And I usually go with 2. I'm like, well, it's an Eviscerate. If I'm going to put in 1, I should just put in 2. It's a card that you put in here for the sake of defeating your opponent with burst damage or with eliminating a key minion. When you already have Vendettas and you already have backstabs and you have access to Leroy and Waggle picks, the value of an Eviscerate goes down. But I think there's a lot of justification for the 1. Just A, as a pinch removal spell, and then B, as another burst tool. It's something else your opponent has to consider, but it's something you don't want to clunk up your draws.
It's an interesting debate because I think if you have the ability to play like 8 Eviscerates in your deck, then you could build a deck around having 8 Eviscerates in your deck.
Critical mass is a very real thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, dropping down from 2 to 1 seems kind of contrary to that argument, but I think in reality it isn't, because critical mass is a great way of putting it. Any number that does not hit that critical mass can potentially just be too many dead draws of a card that really doesn't do too much in the right situation.
Right. Apologies for the spectator issue. We will get that resolved as quickly as possible. Thank you for your patience.
Hi.
Hi. Wasn't expecting that part, but
so Rogue Mirrors, I think the one big difference here is I think Sea Giant, which I know you're not a fan of, but I think potentially it's at its best in the mirror. because it's very, very hard in the rogue mirror to not just explode a board full of lackeys. It's usually one of your most powerful ways to grab tempo, and that's where Sea Giant can then potentially come into play.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting yesterday when we asked Swids about his deck and the one Sea Giant, he had mentioned that it was okay versus Rogue, where I found that's actually one of the places I really want it is because of the lackey turns.
Right.
And he mentioned it specifically against Mage, which I also wanted against Mage because the way that they take advantage of you is their own Sea Giant turns. And so when they're trying to create that dynamic, it's like, what better way to fight them other than to just play a big thing before they do? That's often been what I found with that card. It's just when I was playing it, I was playing on ladder, so I kept playing against decks where it was just like, I don't need this Sea Giant, and it's stuck in my hand. That was my initial impression of why I disliked it. So that also might be kind of in the Eviscerate camp, where it's a card where if you draw too many of them, it can be dead because you just take up too many slots in your hand, but a card that perhaps you just want to have access to so that you can threaten it. I think in an open decklist format like we have here in Grandmasters with Specialists, that having cards that make big impact in certain situations does provide you with some kind of equity that you don't normally have, where your opponent has to just take a stance, do I think they have it or not? And in here, they pretty much always have to account for it in some way.
Yeah, the first time I heard that crystallized was, I believe, 2016 HCT preliminaries, as I believe they were called back then, when George C. first came onto the scene. And he just had Leroy in all his decks for like seemingly no reason. And we interviewed him because he kept winning, and we kept talking to him. And we're just like, what is your Leroy doing in all these decks? Like, it seems super weird. Like, no one plays Leroy in these decks on ladder. Like, what are you doing? It's like, well, if I have a Leroy in my deck, then my opponent spends the entire game scared of Leroy, and that makes them play badly, and I win more games because of it. I was like, that's real smart.
Leroy's a fine card.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been like a staple of Hearthstone for a long time. Even in the wrong deck, it's still like a totally reasonable card to have. Like sometimes you just look down and you're like, oh, I have 6 extra damage. I can kill my opponent.
Right.
It opens up opportunities for you, and at the same time, it closes off some normal windows for your opponent that they're used to practicing with, which is security, knowing that Leroy is not in a standard variation of it. So I think there is a lot of merit to that, and I think that that's one of the big talking points for Grandmasters specifically, is I think players have taken advantage of that really well.
I think so too, and I think there's a reason why I highlighted at the start. It was the number of Eviscerates, the number of Sea Giants, the number of Spirit of the Sharks, right? That's what I pointed out immediately in both deck lists, and I think that's important because although they're markedly different in their actual effects in the game, they're very similar cards in that they are cards Rogue can draw that can potentially be dead. There aren't many of those in the deck. There's, for example, Vendettas on top of that can be dead in the wrong situation. But those are the kind of cards that it just don't do enough in some situations. So there's a balancing act as to how many of those cards you want to have in your deck that can be dead draws in some occasions, but also have fear equity from your opponent and can cause them to play badly playing around them, but then also have blowout game-winning potential in certain situations as well. Eviscerate just for burst damage, Spirit of the Shark for all the things you see Spirit of the Shark do, and Sea Giant, 0 mana 8/8, 1 mana 8/8, draw it off your wand from Togwaggle and just end the game, all this kind of nonsense.
Yeah, I've gotten word that there was internet issues right at the start of the game, so we are getting set up to have a regame from the start of that. No significant action taking place, so that's where we're going to be at the match. So again, I apologize for that, and thank you for your patience on the matter. We're not just jammering on because we want to. Well, I do want to jammer on, but that's not why we're doing it. So, the way we're looking at it right now is we have the stage set. It's a very similar matchup, and I think it's going to boil down a lot to technical play and being able to read the situation correctly. And so some of the ways I look at that are, what are the most important cards in the matchup, and then can you recognize when you're ahead and be able to make a push, or is there too much risk involved with that?
Yeah. And I did not take note last time, but one of the points of contention that players will always bring up in scenarios like this where a regame takes place, especially in the current meta that we have where coin is perhaps the best card in the game, is who had the coin each time.
Yeah, I mean, coin. We're definitely in a coin meta right now.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the contribution of that is just lack of important 2-drops.
Yeah. I heard this, I can't remember whose interview this was in Grandmasters, but someone said, even the decks that don't want coin still want coin because there's a chance you're playing against a deck that does want coin. So you just don't want the mage or the rogue that you're playing against to have the coin. So even if you feel better going first, you almost feel better going second just so you can take that coin away from them.
Yeah, see, that tells me there should there has to be a way where you can build a deck that takes advantage of
Right,
going
yeah,
first.
it's one of those, like, all of those things can't be true situations, right?
But they can be. I mean,
yeah.
I genuinely think, like, if you look at 1 and 2 drops right now, they're not aggressive. They're things that beget opportunity. It's like Flame Imp is the only one we have right now, and honestly, Flame Imp gets checked in a lot of ways. You know, one of the strongest decks that's out there right now is Rogue. Your Flame Imp is... It's going to get backstabbed a lot.
Coin SI'd a lot.
Yeah, those aren't fun when they happen.
Yeah.
You know, I think that against Warrior, a deck that plays Flame Imp is just a lot of times you get checked. Like, the nature of playing Flame Imp is you want to play a lot of other early minions, and what's Warrior really good at? You know, killing early minions that aren't sticky. You know, the only thing Zoo has that's really sticky is, like, a Scarab Egg. And...
Yay.
Yeah, like...
I'm so excited about my 0-2.
I feel like Murloc Shaman has to be undervalued right now. Like,
while we're here, just Blizzard. Can we have some 1 and 2 drops next expansion, please? Just a full set of 1 and 2 drops.
I want 2 3s that threaten my opponent.
Yes.
And whether that's via dealing more damage or objective-like play, I want to see more of them because I love them.
Agreed.
The more 2 3s there are, the more removal people have to play, the less greedy their decks can get, and the more important endgame cards you get. So you get to make better endgame cards that have less impact overall because you can't play as many of them and they're not as significant because early game matters more, which means that you need more removal there as well. That's my soapbox for the day. Edwin Van Cleef, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, you chose to do your soapbox right then, and it wasn't on the subject of Edwin Van Cleef. That's what surprised me.
I feel like I've lobbied against you
okay.
enough in the past.
That's reasonable.
I think Edwin's a really cool card. It's just, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to give people a rest.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you know, is about all the analysis you need at this point about Edwin Van Cleef.
You know.
Yeah.
Bunnyhoppor going to answer back by trying to create tension, which means Kolento gets to secure damage and has opportunity.
So there's a play available here where he just pushes 6 and remakes this as a 6/6 again.
There's also a play where he pushes 6 and just... Well, he saps and remakes a 6/6.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That protects you from Hench Clan Burglar Vendetta. It protects you from Waggle Pick, even though Waggle picking Edwin and taking 6 is not an ideal play.
Yep.
That might push Bunnyhoppor into emergency Ethereal Lackey territory.
The only concern, and I use the word concern very loosely in that scenario, is you know your opponent has a Lackey in hand, so they are able to replay this Edwin again as a 4/4 next turn, which you then don't really have an answer to, but I'm aware of the counterpoint that's steaming towards me from my broadcast partner here, which is, do you really need to a counter to a 4/4 Edwin if you just get 12 damage out of yours in the process?
Kolento definitely, the more I've watched him, the more I have finally honed in on some of his tendencies, which is he will often play around 1 card.
Oh, no. He doesn't have tendencies. He just makes the right play every turn. That was made clear in his interview.
Okay, so I will ignore that and go on to say one of the tendencies I've noticed is he will tend to play around 1-card combinations when they are good for the opponent. He will rarely play around 2-card combinations, and he won't play around 1-card combinations very often that are pretty detrimental to the opponent. And I think Waggle Pick is pretty detrimental right now. It's just taking a lot of damage, and your hand right now is literally damaged. Spear to the Sharp, Life Drinker, Shadow Step, and SI7 Agent, and now you've drawn an Eviscerate. Your plan is clear as day right now. Deal damage. He almost wants Bunnyhoppor to Waggle Pick that.
I think I still like the Shadow Step. I'm unconvinced.
I see where his plan is, though. His plan is to take advantage of the Shadow Step. And
I see his plan too, but I feel like getting a 6/6 on board there, even if your plan is just damage plus damage equals damage, I think a 6/6 in play there represents more damage over time than this Shadow Step.
So I'm going to ask you a very deep question here, because I think this is something Kolento might have been thinking about.
Okay.
Are you more likely to win the game if Bunnyhoppor has to press the emergency button and, like, play an Ethereal Lackey and look for sap? Or are you more likely to win the game if he Waggle Picks your Van Cleef in that spot?
I don't know,
I think you're more likely to win if he Waggle Picks it. Just because you have so much damage in your hand. If he didn't have all this damage in hand, I think he might have played it differently.
But that damage still hits him if you have a 6/6 on board. That's not damage you've gained.
I get that, but the point I'm getting at is that if he plays a 6/6, I think Bunnyhoppor will try and divert his play to emergency situations. So in the success rate where your opponent plays Ethereal Lackey and gets sap because they have to, you can lose those games. I don't think that you often lose games where he waggle picks that Edwin. I really don't with his hand.
Okay.
It's a very unique situation. That's what I think.
Nothing but power.
So, you know, pedantic and so on and so forth. We were on this topic yesterday.
Choose soon.
No cheap spells, huh? I think Bunnyhoppor was looking specifically to take advantage of SI7 agent on the following turn. Oh my goodness. I genuinely don't know what to do now.
It's a really awkward turn in terms of mana usage, resource allocation.
What all were you thinking about there? What all were you thinking about there?
Boy, my long period of silence?
Yeah.
What to engineer, how to engineer this turn, essentially. Like, or even like what Kolento's long-term development plan was for not having a 6/6 in play, which is still kind of where my head's at, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it just so adds up that that second waggle pick draw has kind of solved this game to an extent. Because it's just all of that additional damage that he needs to get over the line. But, you know, it seems pretty clear to me that he's a little bit of damage short without that, which would leave him in a scenario where, you know, potentially conceding board to that waggle pick as he did could have been a game-losing decision.
That backstab may have made this turn.
Are you backstabbing?
I want to backstab SI Edwin this turn. I mean, we have Shark. We're getting double. Edwin.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, sorry, I'm stupid. I wasn't looking at the Shark.
So I guess the
That's
question
significantly better.
is, can you buff it up anymore? And the only thing I was thinking of is, what can you get off of the rest of the cards here? And so something I'm looking at is backstab, and then you use Wanted, and then you coin, and then you Edwin. Is that superior? Because you also get to poke the one in the face, and then the waggle pick also has the chance of returning the lackey in that situation. But I don't think you're swinging the pick this turn. Is Wanted Coin Edwin Van Cleef more or less damage? And I think he's calculating that difference.
Well, it's significantly less, right? Because you're not playing the SI7 in that one. So there's a 3/3 you don't have in play and 4 damage that you don't do this turn.
Yeah. Because you want to free up the mana next turn because you're likely to draw something you're going to use, or
get something off the Henge Clan Burglar next turn, which...
Or want to play something from the waggle pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder.
And so Kolento's got to think about what he loses to here. Does he lose to anything?
He's facing down 17 as it stands, so Bunny would have to find an additional 9.
No eviscerates.
Nope. Life Drinker 6 on its own, though. I think that's the scary card, because Kolento's only real option right now is set up 2-turn lethal.
Yeah, so you're worried specifically about, like, Life Drinker second SI.
But what I mean, I think he's just worried about Life Drinker. This debate is almost irrelevant because he doesn't really have options. His hand does one thing: it sets up 2-turn lethal. I don't think like being scared of cards even really affects his plan.
Yeah, I think it's just that's what he's thinking about. He's like, can I play around this and still kill my opponent?
Right.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah. Well, time to find a timeout.
He's got 2 chances.
Yeah.
Maybe he has 4.
Nope. Yeah, mutate, smart pick there. Most likely out of those 3 to find himself a defensive option. Freezing Trap the only relevant card there? It won't be relevant, but it's the only card that might make Kolento do something stupid.
Oh, look if it's snipe. Like,
Well,
so you mutate into a taunt.
Or if it's
that's a given.
Or if it's misdirection. Yeah.
You have to mutate into a taunt. No option there. Gets the taunt. So now, that freezing trap represents a potential snipe, and I don't think Kolento can afford to play around that in any capacity, so he just casts a Jam Spear to the Shark. So if he draws a minion that he can play with 2 mana, that can change things. But now, you can tell Kolento is going to try to figure this out, and he's going to land on Spear to the Shark and SI7 Agent Face. But he is quite blowing like, I really hope this isn't snipe.
Yep, he's going to get there. What did Bunnyhoppor evolve there, by the way?
He evolved a 4/3 into a 2/6 with taunt.
So he evolved the Henge Clan into a 5-drop. And his option was to make a 4-drop, a 5-drop. Yeah, it's actually, he found the most likely taunt outcome.
Yeah.
13.7% final taunt there.
And I think that's something that he already knows.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he doesn't have to look it up on his phone like I just did.
And Kolento just, I think the pure damage plan was what his hand gave him. And that was kind of where we took that risk with the Edwin, is he's going, Bunnyhoppor doesn't have Eviscerate in the deck. The only answer is really Waggle Pick. If he takes 6 from this, I have a plan to win. And so in his plan, it was draw Leroy, draw Waggle Pick, draw Eviscerate, or pick up Kobolds off of a Lackey generation in some capacity, or just be able to chip for 4 more damage somewhere along the way. And I honestly, with that hand, that's what I would have played too as well.
I don't disagree with any of the words you just said. I just feel like having a 6/6 on the board that's borderline unanswerable by your opponent means that you probably don't have to draw those additional cards. You just win the game with the hand that you have.
That's definitely a true story. That's definitely a true story. This is where I need those rogue experts to tell me what's what. Where's Gallon when I really need him? He just pops up. He's like, the Edwin's better. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be getting into game number 2 of our match of the day. Kolento currently at 1-0. Stay tuned. More Hearthstone European Grandmasters after this.
My name is Fei Liang. My handle is ETC. Before Hearthstone, I was playing World of Warcraft, and when I saw Elite Tauren shift, and I think the card is pretty cool, I'm gonna try it. I think the style I like the most is combo deck, because there are a lot of win conditions and there are a lot of ways you can win the game. My son plays Hearthstone sometimes.
Is he good?
He got rank 9. He likes Zoo list.
Are you going to teach your daughter to play Hearthstone?
Yeah, of course.
Do you think that she'll be better than him?
Probably yes, because I think my daughter is way smarter than my boy. Getting #1 in Grandmaster is gonna totally change my life. I think it proved myself, and my kids are gonna be proud of me.
My name is David Chan. In the game, I go by Just Saying. My username is just kind of a pun, right? But over the years, I think it's grown to mean a lot more to me. Playing Hearthstone for 4 to 5 years, I've probably won like 35,000 games, which means I've lost like 30,000 games. So definitely going back and forth and picking up after every loss. And that's kind of what the anime embodies, right? Is like, you lose a fight, you almost die, and then you come back stronger. So being in Grandmasters, especially coming to the summit and everything, it feels like you have just a wide, diverse range of amazing players, and now it's At least at the start here, it feels like we have a new responsibility to represent Hearthstone, to represent, how fun and competitive that this game can be to the best that we can. So for me, the X factor has to be, I think, just I'm good at finding an edge where other players aren't exactly looking, and then trying to drive as much as I can into that so that I have an even bigger edge at the end of the day. Personal goals for the year: get into the 2 spots from North America to make it to the grand finals this year. I mean, I'm saying this like right after Worlds, but I'm just dying to get back in there,
Kolento versus Bunnyhoppor is underway, and Kolento kicked it off with a 1-0 lead thanks to his burn plan and burning him down. And now we're going into game number 2. Zottle, give me the lowdown on this one.
Yeah, not a lot's going to change. As we mentioned, going into the series, both players have pretty dedicated counter decks for Mage and Warrior as their secondary and tertiary, so it will just be primary against primary yet again, so more of the same, but as is the nature of Rogue, we might see a very different game pan out because Kolento did not pick up too many of his tempo tools, he just picked up damage plus damage, so he executed that game plan. So Bunnyhoppor was on the defensive for large parts of that game. We might see that flipped on its head.
And how often does that burn plan, you think, come into effect? So many of the Rogue games I feel like we've seen have been about that value battle back and forth until one player gets that huge turn somewhere in the middle of the game and takes full advantage.
It's interesting now because we're in this weird fluctuating point where Waggle Pick has started to come back into Rogue, but not to the extent where Weapon Destruction has also come back into Rogue. Because when before the Raiding Party nerfs, every Rogue deck was playing Raiding Party Waggle Pick, so the Rogues were playing Weapon Destruction to counter that plan from the opponent, which then made straight damage somewhat unreliable as a plan in the mirror match, because you'd go for that and you'd just get tempoed out by having your Waggle Pick destroyed and losing a minion off your board, which is a 2-for-1 tempo swing. These days, straight up burn damage in the Rogue mirror is actually a lot more reliable if that's the kind of hand you have, and that is exactly the kind of hand that Kolento had in the previous game.
Well said. I think it's good meta recognition. Because I was kind of wondering, I was like, didn't we start to take these Waggle Picks like slowly out of the deck?
Yeah.
And then they just showed up again one day, and I was like, played it and hit something. I went, why did we take these out of the deck?
Yeah, I talked about this yesterday, right, with, who was it? Was it Orange I was talking to? About whether you ever get to the point where it's not even worth including Weapon Destruction in your dedicated anti-rogue secondary or tertiary, because your opponent most of the time takes those weapons out when they know that the opponent is switching to a counter deck. And it's the same sort of thing. We're just in that kind of weird flux zone where Waggle Pick is being played, but not universally. So players don't want to carry dead cards like Weapon Destruction in their primary deck, because even if they do hit Rogue, they might hit a Rogue that's not playing Waggle Pick.
The super next level is to include it main deck, and then you take out the Weapon Destruction in your anti-rogue secondary deck.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's, long way down the line, like, we might get that many layers in terms of, specialist counter strategy, but it would take a long, long time and a very hard read to develop to that kind of level.
Honestly, like, when I look at Conquest and how it developed over the course of the years, it took a long time for Conquest to get to the point where it was, how do you keep your 4th deck minimally vulnerable and take full advantage of other people's 4th deck? We had so many players try to do like hard target their best deck strategy because you knew everyone's going to have it. You had players just play the 4 good decks and ban your opponent's best deck. And eventually we landed on that point where it was more like a 2-and-2 mix, where it went from being the 4th deck to being the 3rd and 4th deck.
Right.
That to me was a great development that took so long to land on.
It was a real hard turn for Bunnyhoppor there, honestly. While you were talking, it's, I think, Dagger and coining either 3-drop. I think if you're coining a 3-drop, Snip Snap is probably the better of the two, and just a little less vulnerable to full removal from your opponent. If you play Blink Fox, it's dead to just a backstab, and you can face the Nightmare backstab Miscreant turn whilst it is a full board clear.
Welcome to the future of minions. Slightly annoying things that just rumble for tempo and chip damage.
Yeah. But just Dagger there was, I think, a justifiable line as well. Based on the makeup of Bunnyhoppor's hand, coin 4 into 4 was potentially viable as well, instead of going coin 3 into 3.
Yeah, I was a bit curious about the 3 into 3, and I think it is because he doesn't really have strong tempo tools in hand, that he wants to get something that can battle for it right now. Like, if you take the aggressive lead, perhaps you're not even the one battling for tempo. Perhaps it's your opponent. You know, they're taking into consideration backstab SI sort of shenanigans. You're just playing stuff and hitting them. I think that's going to be appropriate.
The pick?
I think so. You'd like to be able to activate combo. This gives you a way to do it with your snip snap on the following turn.
That is true.
And you really want to contain the board pressure right now.
Yeah. I do kind of like the idea of a 4-3 in play versus a 2-3 when Bunnyhoppor has not yet taken the time to equip a dagger, because rogues almost certainly want to spend 4 mana on something that costs 4 these days. So 4-3 against 2-3 is a really nice scenario because Bunnyhoppor is very unlikely to be able to spend 2 on dagger and still have an effective turn.
Ooh.
Gloop with the snip snaps on board.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's a spicy meatball right
God,
there.
that is hard to figure out, though. You know, this is a pretty cool play, I think, from Kolento, where he's just going to be... he's effectively doing the same thing as a pick, but he's getting more development here, where he's saying, I want to favor ways to activate combos, so he takes the mutate in this position.
Right.
And he's just going to leverage his life total in a different way and say, this waggle pick doesn't develop enough, I need burst damage. He's actually just going to evolve the board here.
What the same minion?
Is that thing Hench Clan Burglar in disguise? Is that what that thing is? And now he's put on his robe and wizard hat? How many 4-cost minions are there?
5. 5-cost minions.
I'm sorry, yeah, 5-cost
There
minions.
are 73 5-cost minions in the game.
That's the second time this has happened like this weekend, too, where yesterday we were seeing the same thing, where it was just, they got the same one-off conquerors calling without a Khadgar.
And it's a different probability. Like, if the question is, what are the chances of getting exactly that minion twice, then it's 1 in 73 by 1 in 73. It's the chances of getting a minion twice, then it's just 1 in 73, because the first roll can be anything, and then the second roll just has to match it.
Gosh, I'm so glad finally someone else understands that. You put it in explain it in a way where, like, I hear it and I try to explain it. I go, I give up. Like, you just make it sound so simple. I'm like, I'm dumb. Pretty clear 4-drop play there from Bunnyhoppor. I think there were some considerations for Walk the Plank.
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't have strongly disagreed with it. The mutate has worked out quite well for Kolento. Like, for sure, if I was playing that game on ladder, like staring down 2 snip snaps on the board, like I would have taken Gloop just to figure out if it was the nuts in that scenario or not, or like whether it, you know, it's just one of those dream scenarios that doesn't come to fruition. I wonder. I don't actually have like average stats done right now for the minions in the game, but like 4-3 into a 5-drop, like I wonder on average what the stat gain you achieve off that actually is.
That's the one thing I haven't done. I've done like so many of the weird different probability things. I just haven't done that one.
Right. Yeah. Like I have things saved basically in the context of Conjurer's Call. That's what I have. Just things that are relevant to Conjurer's Call.
Nice turn for Kolento here. Just take full initiative.
I wonder.
I mean, what's the plan here? You need to be able to fight for board. It's really tough to do that while that 2/6 is there. It says Death Rattle, destroy an enemy minion. It just picks one at random, blows it. It's a deadly shot. How do you develop and fight for board while that's in play? Like, certainly there's some priest deck that can be doing things like this. Right?
Yeah, that does mean you have to play other priest cards.
God, priest needs a weapon.
Priest needs a weapon.
It really needs a weapon.
Okay.
and it needs an Edwin, and it
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
A backstab would be nice.
Hey, Priest removal is actually good. That's the one thing Priest has going for it.
Steady on.
It doesn't have anything else to do, is the problem.
What priest removal cards are, quote, good?
I think Shadow Word Pain and Forbidden Words are very good cards.
Shadow Word Pain is extremely good.
Yeah, I think Forbidden Words is a really good card.
I have been worse.
It's 1 mana, kill a 1-drop right now.
It's fine.
Like the Eternium Rover, and you go. That's the sound it makes when you pop an Eternium Rover.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get armor.
So many options.
Unleash Sea Giant.
Yep.
So you can play Evil Cable Rat. You can play the Lackey. You could unleash Sea Giant. That's 1, 2, 6. Yeah.
7 minions on board as well, yeah.
Wow, that was the best draw on the deck then. The Sea Giant was.
It was. The Lackey being 2 damage is somewhat awkward. I guess he can ship it into the 1/4.
You can also just save it.
Could also just save it.
I mean, you have Spirit of the Shark in hand.
Shipping it into the 1/4 looks pretty solid right now, though.
I was kind of thinking damage. Like,
I like
all
full
right.
clears.
Yeah, I do too. That's definitely something that's I think of some importance.
Oh, Bunny looking like an attack didn't go through here. Yeah, a 1/1 has been left alive.
He is very upset about that.
Yep, very frustrating experience. And I'm not even going to go through the rigmarole. Normally in a situation like this, I would get on my high horse about starting turns before the rope appears, so situations like that don't happen. That was an extremely complicated Sea Giant turn, which actually required that amount of thinking.
It also, it's just, I think that might be, in my experience, the first time I've actually seen him have to have a mechanical repercussion from that happening. I've seen players get decision points like that all the time. I don't always blame them, but here, that's the first time I think I've ever seen Bunnyhoppor fall to a mechanical situation of that. So I guess my question is, how relevant is that in the grand scheme of things?
Very. It means that these Goblin Lackeys only have to... Oh, I guess if he's using those 2/3/1s to trade, then it made very little difference. That 1/1 just kills a 1/1.
So we ended up in the same scenario.
Yeah, pretty much.
Kolento return serve in a big way. It's pretty rare that with just a Spirit of the Shark, you're able to kill 3 1/1s and an 8/8.
So many options.
Is it?
I mean, 7 mana, he blew up 11 health worth of minions.
I feel like that's what happens when your Shark's in play.
I feel like when my Shark's in play, my hand gets full and all my lackeys are witchies.
Okay.
I wonder.
So what else can you do? Big thing go.
Yeah.
And if that Sea Giant got in, oh boy. Oh no, that's problem.
Make it stop.
I don't even know what do you...
The thing that kills the 10/10?
That's like your whole hand, basically. Like, I want to figure out how to deal as much damage as I can and get my own 10/10, which means that I need to trade off some of my minions, which means I play more stuff, which means my board ends up... You just got every direction to go. Because right now, the Wild Pyromancer kills his whole board.
Yep.
So it's pretty tough to sap without trading that off. So once you're going to trade the 3 damage in,
Well, I mean...
how much more do you have to do to get through the Edwin? Like, can you just kill it entirely? I mean, with the sap in hand, you kind of want them to play it again if you can kill it entirely, but you're staring down a Spear of the Shark on your own side.
I mean, you say nice things, but it's a 10/10 and you have a sap.
Yeah, and you get to clear off your board while pushing damage because the Wild Pyromancer's there, redevelop in full, and then play the Edwin.
Right. Like,
yeah, this is perfect.
Yeah. There's just not really any lost cost in just shipping everything you have facing there and just sapping the 10-10 and replacing it with a 10-10 of your own.
It's so weird that the liability of Wild Pyromancer was actually just a benefit in this situation.
It wasn't a benefit.
I think killing off a 1/1 so to redevelop stronger is a benefit.
Sure. Okay, yeah, because he had like faceless lack.
Yeah, it's just a weird circumstantial thing. That's like so. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Yeah, you might be right.
Just a weird situation.
Right.
I like weird stuff. Poor Edwin. Just wants to stick around.
Yes, Edwin Van Cleef the musical right now. That's just what we're watching.
The Brotherhood shall prevail.
And so right now, Kolento actually does not have a way to answer this Edwin.
We have 3, 5, 8, 9 on board currently. Yep, it's not looking pretty. Probably time for Kolento to go fishing for more answers.
Or to race.
I think either way, it goes fishing for more answers. It just depends on, it just changes what the question is, right? Like, whether you're racing or looking for a way to kill the Edwin, you're just looking for something to help you deal damage quickly or something to deal with the Edwin Van Cleef. Basically what I'm saying is Hench Clan happens this time.
Yeah, does this freezing trap give you a way to do both?
I wonder.
Maybe.
Choose soon.
Problem is there's a snip snap hanging around. Freezing trap's a little awkward when you have to deal with a full snip snap to make it strong.
God, these turns are so strong.
Yeah, they really are. And this again goes back to the interview that we watched before the series started where, you know, there was an opportunity there to just race and say, I set up almost certain lethal on you next turn and just ignore your 14-14. Forget about this freezing trap. I don't want to ship a bunch of damage into a snip snap. Kolento chose to trade as much as he could. And he talked about that exact scenario in his interview where he said, I'm not trading there because I'm a defensive player. I'm trading there because that's the play that wins the game the most often. Whether you think he's right or not is where the game gets interesting because no one knows that stuff for sure.
You know what I'll boil it down to? I have seen Kolento trade a lot more than pretty much everybody else, and he wins a lot more than pretty much everybody else. It's very weird. I don't get it. I remember back in 2014 where him and Firebat were having similar win rates, and they were playing in the idealistic
Polar opposite
ways.
styles, yes.
Firebat never traded a minion. Kolento always traded a minion. How did each of you win games in the same dominant fashion? I don't get it.
So, important note to talk about here. Bunnyhoppor essentially calls out the secret there, which I think is probably the correct thing for him to do. His hand is Leroy Vendetta. I don't think he's winning a game in which this 14-14 does not connect with him.
I actually dislike that, and I think you Leroy the Edwin and then attack with your 14-14.
Why?
Because that way you attempt to kill a 6-6, the Leroy goes back to your hand, use 14-14 to attack.
But you're not setting up lethal for yourself that way.
I think,
You're giving 2 extra damage to your opponent as well, who has like lethal represented against you on board.
Yes, I get that, but if you connect with the 14 damage there, you're also still not representing lethal.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have to do?
What if you... So does it change... If you draw Shadow Step off the top, if you play your Leroy there and it comes back to you for 7, then Leroy Shadow Step is still the same thing. So that's fine. It doesn't change with Waggle Pick because Waggle Leroy is already 9, so you can't afford to re-dagger after that.
Yeah, trade.
I guess it doesn't change an awful lot to try and trade with the Leroy there.
You ran the Leroy in, it goes back to your hand,
so
trade off the Edwin.
Yeah, the one downside that you have is that you give your opponent 2 extra damage. So
Yeah.
you basically nullify what you've achieved with your Life Drinker
Take
to
off
pull
4.
yourself out of
You
lethal.
take 4 attack off board because the opposing Edwin dies.
Right.
He's probably still going to lose in that spot, but you get what I'm saying. Kolento's ready for an interview.
Wait, what?
Kolento, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hello, guys.
Hello, and congratulations on your win. I feel like after casting you in Grandmasters this whole time, you've kind of quietly crept up to this fantastic record that you have right now. Talk to me about this week's preparation and about your rogue deck that you brought this week. It feels like you've been bringing new stuff almost every single time.
Deck is almost the same I brought last time. It just few changes. One of is right. I mean, whether or not it's good, I'm not sure. I just feel like one of his right sounds correct. I was bringing all the different decks every single week except for Mage week 2. The one time I got beaten twice after I did it. So this time I felt like it's really unpredictable to do the same decks 2 times in a row. I can say it's panned out, like we have a mirror and then I have warrior, which is slightly unfavorite matchup, but it's a bomb, not a control, so it should be okay.
So I want to ask you about a specific turn, because Admirable and myself had a hot debate about it. Early on in game 1, you sapped the Edwin and you just left your Edwin as a 6/4. You could have Shadow Stepped it and played it as a 6/6. Can you just talk about your thought process that turn?
Bunny doesn't run Eviscerate. The only thing what would have killed him was Vendetta. Again, it's unlikely to happen. It could be just Vendetta for 4 without a discount, which is I'm fine with. The Shadow Step was quite valuable since I had a Shark, and I could potentially push for lethal using the Shadow Step. I could Shadow Step the Shark if I didn't find anything to pair the Shadow Step with, which I did. It was pretty useful with my hand. I felt like keeping it is more valuable than healing Edwin for 2.
And so now, looking forward, your position for playoffs is pretty darn good. Do you expect this trend to continue for you in Grandmasters, or do you think that your next few matches might get tougher and tougher as we close out Grandmasters here?
I think with this win, I sealed my spot in playoffs. Am I right?
I have not done the math on that, and because tiebreakers are in effect and all sorts of crazy shenanigans can happen, I don't think that I can say personally right now. Perhaps there's someone that could give me that information, but probably not offhand.
I mean, it doesn't really matter. I'll just try to do my best always. Like, this game, I just missed 1 damage. Maybe something else very small where I lost a little bit of percentages. I can't really say it on the fly. I have to rewatch. But it was fine, this game. I think this match in general, like everything I did so is last few matches. I don't feel like I made many mistakes.
Where did you miss the damage?
Oh, you didn't see it? When I didn't play Rush Lucky before attacking?
Ah, that's where it was. Well, all right. No, I didn't quite catch that. I think we were talking about just overall general philosophy and approach. Because it looked pretty good to me. But we did debate a lot in game number 1. Kolento, congratulations on your win, and looking forward to seeing you play this week.
Thank you. See you later.
That win, I mean, Kolento's a no-nonsense kind of guy. He's like, I'm going to tell my thing, I'm going to do my thing, I'm going to win my matches, I'm going to play my matches, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. He's just very succinct and decisive in how he plays Hearthstone, and even how he talks in interviews. It feels like, especially when he's talking to me, he's like, let's get this over with. I don't blame him.
Are you trying to suggest that Kolento just doesn't like you?
Not that he doesn't like me, but that he definitely doesn't like me, but he doesn't dislike me.
I think your personality types don't mesh very well. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Do you think if I asked him to wish you a happy birthday, he would have done?
Yes.
Okay.
I think he would have just gone, happy birthday, Admiral. Thanks, Kolento.
Good enough. You just did it to yourself with a really crude impression. And that's the same thing, right?
Let's go ahead and take a look at the standings and see where.
Please stop. No. Cancel that impression.
So he's not locked for it. I mean, if everything pans out nightmarishly for him, if he lost his next 2 matches, and then Bunnyhoppor won all of his and Viper won all of his, then it's a tiebreaker between Kolento and Bunnyhoppor at that point. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, at 11 matches. There's 3 more matches to go. Actually, if he lost every single match,
Kolento still has 3 to play. Yeah, he can just get overtaken still.
Yeah. So in Kolento's mind, that's locked it up. He's gonna win one of his next 3.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that wraps up. I mean, Fino still stands at the top at 9-1. He picked up his first match loss last week, and so that makes me his good luck charm. Then I apologize that I had to get married, Fino. But Kolento has just looked so solid in his games, and honestly, like even the spots where like he's like, oh, I missed the 1 damage. I'm like, come on, man. You just beat him up that game.
Right.
You controlled the whole board the whole game.
Yeah.
The flying Edwins back and forth.
It was a very Edwin-heavy series. Like, even the big point of debate in the first game was about, usage of Edwin while sapping your opponent's Edwin, and then game number 2, they were both just sharking their Edwins into 10-10s and 14-14s. Actually, Kolento was doing it naturally. He just built a natural 10-10 Edwin, didn't he? But yeah, I mean, that card will continue to be a point of debate, I'm sure, for many months to come.
Indeed.